Hi, welcome to the Drama Free Living Podcast. It's Dennis and Lisa McIntee. And Lisa, we're on our last episode of The Death of the Micromanager.
The Death of the Micromanager.
We're finally killing him.
Let's put him to death.
Yeah, let's just lock him up and just put him to death, rest in peace, throw away the key, whatever we have to do. And, Lisa, I think what I've kind of learned as we kind of walk through this is if I'm micromanaging, it's like it kind of creates this sense of like false like significance.
Oh, within yourself.
Yeah, because it's like I think my thinking can't be questioned or, nobody else can think like me. And a little bit, it creates the thought police. I have to all my team's thinking for them. And then what's fascinating, I've never met a manager that has said, no, I don't want my team to think.
Is that some hubris in play?
Maybe a little bit. Right? Might be. Yeah. And so, and even like this whole idea is that they have this scarcity mindset. And we'll kind of get into that today is that they're unhappy when other people are promoted. They become jealous and envious at even the extreme parts that we've seen in larger organizations. So we don't want that to be you. But Lisa, kind of give us a recap. We're in the 4th episode of The Death of the Micromanager. I think it's going to be the last episode. Maybe next week we might jump into some more, but it's been really fascinating.
Absolutely. So symptoms that you're a micromanager or you have a micromanager on your team or in your organization, those are things like lack of trust. Yep. Okay, stifled creativity, poor time management, reduced employee engagement and motivation, hindered growth, high employee turnover, lack of delegation, limited collaboration. These are all symptoms of having this micromanager syndrome on your team, in your organization, or that you're the micromanager and you're part of the reason that this culture is created. Wow. Now, part of that is we are having so many problems with retention, and we are having so many problems with employee engagement right now. Now, part of it is a result of everything that happened in remote working, and we're a couple years post the pandemic and all of those things, but part of it, a lot of it has to do with these concepts of the micromanager and what are the things behind being a micromanager. So we talked about 3 fears in the last 3 podcasts, and that's one of them is I'm going to get blamed for everything. I'm going to micromanage because I'm going to get blamed if something goes wrong.
You got to confront that fear. It's there. It's real.
Absolutely. And then another reason why I might micromanage is that I'm afraid of inefficiency. And then my head's going to be on the line. Or my company might not survive. So I'm going to micromanage.
Or I might not be happy about it.
Right. Absolutely. And then another one is just losing control. And some people have this high need for control. Yeah. And they don't want to give up this micromanaging because they don't want to lose control.
And you really have to step into that. And this is what we really mean by there's always a deeper issue at play. Micromanaging is just a symptom. And if you're doing it, you have to step back and what's the deeper issue at play? And, Lisa, as you're talking, I kind of realized, I've never met somebody that woke up and showed up to work and said, man, I hope I get managed today. Oh my gosh, I just love it when you manage me. No, everybody wants to be led. But really nobody wants to be managed. And I think you manage projects, you manage things, but you lead people. And this is sort of that. Now, we're not trying to change language. If you have the word manager or the title manager, we're not trying to change the language of your organization, but just realize, just realize that people want to be led, not managed.
Absolutely. And also nobody wakes up and says, hey, I just really want to stifle creativity on my team today. Or nobody wakes up and says, hey, I just really want to limit my team's productivity today.
Yeah, they don't.
They don't. Or nobody wakes up and says, hey, I just want to limit the growth of my team today. And so those are all different failures of a micromanager and failures of a micromanager leading a team or a micromanager being part of the team. And we talked about those on the last 3 podcasts.
We did. So let's jump into this last final podcast really on micromanager. And it's really this idea of fear of being replaceable.
Yes.
Right? I'm not going to be needed. But what's interesting is the more you grow and you continue to grow, the farther you can go. And the farther people under you go. And one of the best conversations I love to have with team members is when they ask me, hey, I want to have your job. What do I have to do to to be at your level.
You're like, sure, here, go ahead and take my job.
Well, because really it's a great sign of like respect. And you've become a person that other people look up to. And I love it. But if we're not careful as leaders, we kind of think like, oh, we're going to be exposed as a fraud. Mm-hmm. Or, hey, if I don't have all the answers. And I've learned that some of the best answers is simply, I don't know. It's okay not to know. Now, it's okay not to stay in that place of not knowing, but in the initial, it's okay many times just not to know.
It's okay you cannot stay in the place of not knowing.
Right,
At some point, you have to get the answers.
Right.
But initially.
And it's great to just be honest about that. And I think a lot of times leaders deal with imposter syndrome, is they're trying to wear a mask or trying to be somebody, or almost I'm afraid of being found out. And here's what's interesting is we've discovered with blind spots, it's what you don't see that other people see. And at the end of the day, it's like people know you have them.
Yeah.
Right? They already know that you have them. And really this fear of being replaceable, it drives this scarcity mindset. It really does. It drives a scarcity mindset of like, oh, there's not going to be enough and I got to hoard everything, and really having this growth mindset, really confronting this fear. And it really is a big fear. And what it kind of produces as a failure is it's this my way or the highway, right? I've got, and what we've discovered is that when the team wins, everybody wins. When somebody on the team wins, it's just like everybody winning. And really learning how to celebrate other people.
Right. And so along with this fear of being replaceable, it all comes down to the stories that we tell ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
These stories that we tell ourselves. Okay, so
and the lies that we believe.
And the lies that we believe. Okay, if somebody does this differently than I do, I could lose my job, or I could be exposed as a fraud, right? But those go back to those stories that we tell ourselves, and just harnessing those stories and making sure that our internal dialogue and our inner critic is held at bay. So we can be productive, and so we can be future focused and filled of possibility rather than being held back. And we talk about that quite a bit in the course that we just created, Emotionally Intelligent, being less reactive and more interactive with your team.
Because everything becomes a story.
Everything. It's so much about the stories we tell ourselves, and then the stories that we tell our team and those around us, and without even realizing that we're telling those. And it's just fascinating because that internal dialogue of, I could totally lose my job. Well, could you lose your job? Absolutely. But what's the likelihood? Or would I be exposed as a fraud? Well, are you a fraud? I mean, if you are a fraud, then yes, maybe you should be afraid that you're going to be exposed as a fraud. But if you're just a human that makes mistakes and knows things and doesn't know things, and you're learning along the way, then no, you're not a fraud. You're just human. And there's a complete difference.
And I think that's the key. It's like, just because you don't know, you continue to grow. Just because I don't know doesn't make me an imposter. Just because I don't know doesn't make me a fraud. And what's fascinating, we've talked about this on other podcasts, is just shed the light on it. Just get it out into the open. Hey, I really fear, being replaced. You can go up to your manager, hey, I'm giving this responsibility. I really feel maybe I'm not needed. Well, listen, as you continue to grow, part of your job as a manager is to look up to the people that are leading you and asking, okay, what can I take off their plate?
Okay, so I don't know if I would go into my higher up and say, I'm afraid that I'm not needed. I don't know if I would quite word it that way.
Well, maybe not word it that way.
But I get the concept, and I agree with the concept.
Yeah, and I think if you're in the right organization, those are great conversations to have.
Yeah.
And so you have to step back, and really a lot of this, it just takes a lot of courage. And that's why we created Emotionally Intelligent, really to help people get the courage. So listen, if you're lacking courage, if you maybe some of these fears, you're like, oh my gosh, that's a real fear. We want to just encourage you to get the course. We walk through all of these fears and really give you those practical strategies. So it's emotionallyintelligentcourse.com, and we'll put it in the show notes, and you can have it. And because what we don't want is we don't want this failure of it becomes my way or the highway.
Yeah, and that is the failure. One of the failures of a micromanager.
Yeah, and managers really end up with this insecurity. And trigger identifier is another tool. We've been talking about it quite a bit. So listen, We have talked about it the last 4 podcast episodes. And if you don't have it yet,
it's free.
It's free.
Seriously.
Just go get it. It
really helps
download
you
it. It's
unpack
yours.
a situation, what's going on, and why are things going the way they are, and why am I responding the way I am?
Yeah, because part of what you want to do is you want to create this collaboration is really about just creative connections. But you don't get those creative connections if it's my way or the highway.
No.
You don't get creative connections with your team.
I would be thinking, fine, I'm taking the highway.
And really creativity comes out of multiple perspectives. But I'm not going to get
I like that. Say that again.
Yeah, creativity comes out of multiple perspectives. And if it's my way or the highway, I'm not getting multiple perspectives. And if I'm not developing trust with my team, it's really built by this collaborative mindset. So it's almost like trust, collaboration, creativity. And trust, collaboration, creativity. That's how it kind of
trust,
works.
Collaboration, creativity, I mean, that's living life in high definition.
Yeah, it's like living life in color, not in black and white. Mm-hmm. And so, Lisa, talk about the forward movement, because we wanted to kind of deal with some of these trust and this whole idea of building trust in your forward movement.
Okay, so if you feel as though I have micromanager tendencies, or if you think I can see how my team is being less productive, their creativity is stifled, you just really resonate with some of these things that we've brought up, here are some things that you can put in place for the long term that can help you stay out of the micromanager world. Yep. And one of these things is to build trust.
Yeah, because really your fears are limiting that ability. Mm-hmm. They're kind of getting in that way, in the way.
And we did a whole set of podcasts last month on creating trust and building trust.
Character and competency. And there are 2 ways to grow trust: is you can increase your character and you increase your competency. So it's a heart and head. It's a skill, and it's also a character issue. And so continue to grow. Both of those are super important.
Yeah. And we call these forward movements, we call these steps to gaining control of the micromanager, because these are not quick fixes. We're going to get to fast fixes later.
We're going to get you one thing to do.
But this is something that you can do long term, and that would be to build trust, build your character, build your competencies, and build your character and your competencies within your team.
Yeah, because it really is a mindset. Trust is a mindset, and mindset really determines methods. Mindsets define the methods. But if you don't have the right methods, because here's the thing, you can learn different delegation skills, but if you don't have the mindset, you're going to revert back to some of these fears.
Yes.
You're going to step out, and maybe you're going to use the intention clarifier, but then you're going to step back in and micromanage because you've never developed the mindset, and you've really never dealt with the fear. And so that's part of why we really wanted to kind of walk through this, because I think the fallacy sometimes with management is there's a lot of management how-tos. Here's how you do this. Here's how you do this. And we have a lot of how-tos. We have a lot of how-tos in the course. We have a lot of how-tos. Our books are a lot of how-tos. But the truth is, Lisa, if how-tos were enough, we would all be skinny, we would all be rich, and we would all be happy. Right? And we have all these how-to books on how to lose weight, but the problem is I just like to eat ice cream.
And that brings us to, we talked last week about one of the ways of forward movement and steps to gaining control is feedback and accountability. Absolutely. And so I'm bringing that one back in here as that is a step to gain forward movement over the long term, is that if you want to, you talked about you can kind of fall back into those tendencies. And so if you have feedback and accountability around you, it will keep you from falling back into those tendencies as you get better and better and learn how to delegate more and learn how to give more.
Yeah, because it's very painful to confront some of these fears, and you need a support team behind you to be with you and help give you that accountability and some of that emotional support to step in and confront some of those fears.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so another one would be developing communication skills. Now, this is not a fast fix. We'll get to the fast fixes in a minute. But this is a long-term strategy to get yourself out of micromanager mode so that you have better retention, you have better collaboration, you have increased creativity. And it would be developing communication, understanding context and content,
knowing tone and voice
and tempo,
and it's all in the course.
Recognizing what you're feeling, what the situation is. There's so much out there on developing communication skills. So however you go about it, develop your communication skills, because that will allow you to be able to communicate what's actually going on.
Yep, good.
And then a third thing for forward movement would be to let go.
Oh no, say it's
Just
not so.
Let
it go.
And let go more.
I don't even know the rest of the words of the song.
Okay.
Right. Sorry.
So let it go.
I get paid not to sing.
You do.
I do.
You do get paid not to sing. So it's trust, but verify. Let go. Have a system of being able to report back. So you let go. You delegate this project. Now you don't dump it, because dumping would be here. It's like throwing up on them. Here's the project.
And don't give any context.
Don't give any context. And then you step back and you don't give your hand of support along the way.
Well, Lisa, and I think part of that, like checking back in, you put that on the person that's doing the project. And that keeps you out of that micromanager where you step, okay, Lisa, where are you at on this? Well, if that's your responsibility, you just define, hey, these are some check-in times. Can you check back in? And it's a totally different scenario when you come back and say, hey, Dennis, I want to let you know, here's where it's at, and I need some help with this, and I don't know about this, but here's where it changes that, and it's just a communication skill.
And there's a difference. So you're checking back in. Yes, it is the person that is the executor that should check back in with you as the lead, but you as the lead also need to check in with the person that is the executor.
And you do it with the heart of support.
Otherwise, it's dumping.
Yeah.
So if you give something over and you delegate it and you ask the person that is executing that project to check back in, but you just leave it at that and you put it all on them, you're not there to support them. And so you want to set up, I would like for us to check in once a week.
And it's a two-way street. That check-in is a two-way street.
It is a two-way street, because that is how we keep from dumping. And then when we do that check-in, it's not, okay, this is your meeting. You go, you tell us everything. It's, let's collaborate together. Let's sit down. These are our objectives. This is where our results, where we wanted to be at this point. How are we doing on this? And it's a reporting, but it's also a collaboration and being able to problem solve. So it's not just okay, I need a report. Where is it at? It's not a drill sergeant move. It's more of a give it back and forth exchange.
Yeah, and I think leaders need to they can get better at things like reports can be done in emails. It can be done in writing
if
it
it's
doesn't
something that's factual.
It doesn't need a conversation, but the conversation needs to be around the collaborative, the problem solving,
the encouragement, the creative. It's very difficult to be creative in an email. Very difficult to be creative. Now, writing can be very, very creative, but it's hard to have a creative exchange in a long period of time, and through email or through Slack or whatever your messaging communication system is.
Okay.
So letting go. So it's trusting but verifying, reporting back during the process. What are the steps of the process? Not just throwing caution to the wind, but let's do this in a sequential way. Your favorite.
Can we do it in a random way? I love it when it's random. Different leadership styles, but it's important to understand.
Listen to the previous podcast. You'll get it.
Okay, fast fixes. Come on.
Fast fixes.
What do I do right now?
Okay, this is what we need to do.
Okay.
Right now, this is something that we can do, right? Okay. Share your plan. Share your plan with someone that you can be honest with and that you can ask them to hold you accountable to walking it out. So, no, we are not there. We are not at the finish line. We are at the start line, and we have gone the first quarter mile. Yeah. But you need somebody there cheering you on in that marathon of the death of the micromanager that can hold you accountable. So you have shared the plan with them and what you're doing.
And make sure the plan is truthful. I can't be creative, without the facts or without reality.
Absolutely.
Right? So just tell the reality. It is what it is.
And along with being truthful, that's another one of our fast fixes is be honest with your team, what you're expecting of them, now. And this is also retraining you. So it's clear expectations at the front.
Well, and really, Lisa, there are expectations that people can't meet. It's their expectations that you haven't shared with people.
The unvoiced expectations.
The unvoiced expectations, right? And so a lot of times if I have unmet expectations, I have to step back as a leader and go, have I
really communicated that?
Or
did I say it or did I just think it? Okay, so that is something that you do. You think something.
Hey, are you telling on me?
I am totally telling on you. You think something, you think a statement or an idea, and you actually think that you tell somebody, or you think that you told me.
Well, I believe you have the sixth sense that you
I can read your mind.
You can read my mind. I think my team can read my mind.
And
you mean you cannot read my mind?
And we're sitting in this conversation, and I'm thinking, I wish I had it recorded because I know 100% you did not say that. Now your memory,
I know 100% that I did say that.
Now your memory is your brain is amazing. It's a computer, and your memory is incredible, and you remember all kinds of details and stats and facts.
Random facts. Not sequential. They're just totally random. They're like, whoa.
And they're very concrete.
Yeah. But I don't remember the process. I have no idea.
But if you actually said something or not, there's so much creativity going on in your brain. And so me being sure that you have communicated it, and then when you communicate that, put it in writing. Because if you don't put it in writing, once upon a time we used to do business with a handshake. And unfortunately, we don't do business with a handshake anymore because
it's unclear.
It is unclear, and it has failed many times. And going through the legal system, it's just not going to work anymore. That we don't live in that culture anymore. But with our team, when we are communicating something, when we're honest with our team and what the expectations are, then we list them out. We list out the deliverables, the expectations, the results, and even the process.
And it really creates a sense of certainty on team members. And typically when you're micromanaging, there's a lot of uncertainties.
And then with a micromanager, they get these open loops in their head, and they don't know where something is at. And they can go and they can look on this written paper. It gives the timelines, it gives deadlines, it gives who's responsible, it gives the order of events. And then you can go and you can look as a micromanager and say, okay, we are at this point of the project, this is where we're at, this is whose ball it is right now. And you can use something like Trello for project managing or different things like that you can use. There's all different tools, but you can tell exactly whose ball it is, which court it is in at this time, what's been done and what hasn't been done. And it's a very easy accountability system without it just being words in the stratosphere or maybe words that weren't even communicated.
It creates these open loops, which then creates, unmet expectations and really creates unclear expectations.
Absolutely. And now we get to my favorite fast fix.
Your favorite?
My favorite fast fix out of all of the fast fix that we've listed for this death of a micromanager.
It is?
It is a code word.
Okay. Well, what are you talking about?
Okay. So we've heard of code words. There's all kinds of stuff. So there's this real deal now with AI, people taking AI and taking somebody else's voices and making phone calls. And it's a family member, and this family member is in distress. And so the other family member on the other end of the line, they're trying to get something from them. And it's not even really that person. It is somebody, it is their voice that someone has taken AI and created their voice. And so they are encouraging people and families and organizations set up a code word. So if somebody calls and they are in distress and they need money, and it's like if your mother called and she needed something, we would give it to her immediately, right? Now, not that she's been kidnapped, but that
unless she tells us the code word.
Her car has broken down and she left her wallet at home and she needs this money.
Should we say the code word on the podcast?
No.
Okay.
And she needs this money. And so then the other person on the line, before you give out any sensitive information, you say, okay, well, what's the code word? Or you figure out a way to weave in this word into the sentence. And when you hear this sentence or you hear this code or this phrase, it knows, okay, you are the real person, and I know this is a real situation. This is not a false alarm.
Okay, so explain how that works on Teams.
How does that work on Teams? So if you're the micromanager, right?
I'm glad I'm not, but
if you're the micromanager and in the heat of it, in the heat of everything, you fall back into the tendencies of micromanaging. You set up with your team, and this is a team collaborative thing when your team knows, hey, I am learning to give you autonomy, to give you the opportunity to do what you do best and step away and take my hands off, not completely, but take my hands off and step alongside. And so we're going to use this code word. So when I get in the middle of it and I am just
command and demanding.
Command and demand, and I'm rolling, and I've got these ideas going. I just want to take over, and I want to redirect the ship. You come up with a code or a code word, and you say, hey, here's an example. So a code could be, is this my project or is this yours?
I was thinking like blue.
Okay.
A random word.
Okay, that would work too if you really, truly, if everyone knows what it is. But it's a code word or a code phrase that you use, and it creates safety. So it's you set it up in advance. It's a statement that is non-confrontational, and it's very clear. And so if you're coming in and you're just doing your thing and kind of taking the responsibility off me, kind of stealing it from me.
Disempowering you, possibly?
Disempowering me. I can step back and say, I just need to ask you a question. Is this my project or is this your project?
That's a good one.
And we've established in a time of peace, in a time of non-conflict, in a time of collaboration, that when this statement is said, that is a trigger for you to step back and think, okay, am I taking over? Am I being a micromanager? Am I stifling the creativity of my team? And this creates, this is just a road for feedback, for effective way to breaking a bad habit.
Well, and we talked about early podcasts about a trigger for collaboration. That's a great trigger that creates collaboration. So just like you can have a trigger that sends you to micromanaging, you can have a trigger that sends you to collaboration, and creating these new different triggers, because what happens is when you're emotionally connected to the issue, your focus is fuzzy. Your clarity is cloudy, right? You're in the heat of battle and you just don't think clearly. And you need this trigger to snap you back and go, oh,
absolutely,
that's not collaborative.
Absolutely. And these code words work in your family life, in your team, and
everywhere.
Different things. I mean, we have this code word that when things get tense between you and I, you look at me and say, I don't feel safe.
Yeah.
And that's for me to think, okay, so we need to back this down because you're at a point where this is no longer a creative environment.
Right.
And so there are different code, this concept of a code word or a code phrase can be applied anywhere, and it just increases the collaboration and the feedback and increases trust.
And really just creates this idea of just information. Because the problem is a lot of times feedback comes across as an attack. And one thing that we have both learned is that you can't attack me if I don't think you are.
Absolutely.
So if I don't think you're attacking me, then it's not and then it gets even better, because if I don't think you're attacking me, guess what? I don't have to defend. And you wonder, why do people get defensive? And this is for another podcast, but we get defensive because we see feedback as an attack. But if we turn and just see it as information, and what this code word does is it just helps us see it as information.
And it opens the